Shalom and welcome to another edition of Parsha Talk. I'm Rabbi Elliot Malin in Highland Park, New Jersey, at the Highland Park Conservative Temple Congregation on Shemet. Joining me, my good friends, Rabbi Barry Chesler, who is today seated in a room in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Congratulations to Carol Chesler, Cantor Carol Chesler, who now has assumed the pulpit of what's the name of the shul?
Temple Bethel.
Bethel, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and on behalf of you and Carol, I invite anyone who is watching to come visit you on Shabbat. That will boost up the whatever. It's a lovely place, beautiful shul. Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanovsky at Anshe Chesed in New York City, and Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanovsky and I were at Camp Ramah yesterday in the Berkshires visiting some of our old chanichim and our old friends. Boy, it's always, can we just spend 2 seconds talking about it? We have such mixed emotions visiting camp. On the one hand, such a big part of our lives, so many wonderful memories, wonderful associations there. And of course, we miss it, and we're happy to be there also. We're happy to see. It's just joy. Jeremy, what did you think yesterday?
I first of all, we do have mixed emotions because, that's for the three of us. It's a phase of our life that is, in the rearview mirror. But those summers were so precious, and I loved being with you guys, and I loved being there, and I loved seeing our old friends up in camp, and I loved seeing my personal children. And I spent nine full summers at camp, and then a couple of isolated weeks after that. And one of the things I always appreciated was seeing the kids, I saw older siblings and then younger siblings, and saw little kids become big kids, become counselors, and getting to see some of those children whom I knew when they were little, and now seeing them as big kids was very sweet.
A generation at camp is like 5 years, 6 years, so with a snap of a finger, a blink of an eye, things go by so quickly. The kids, I couldn't recognize some of the kids who are just so big now. And they're all, kids that we taught when they were like 8 and 9 are now on staff. And not only staff, but they're senior staff.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable. It was really funny, there's a place near camp for our listeners and watchers called the Stone Church, which is it's not a church, and it is stone. It's a cave that has a stream running through it. It's not far from camp. And there was a group going yesterday, and I so wanted to go with them. We had so many good times there hiking there, and
we took so many kids to
we took them for tefillot in the morning. We took them for classes there, cookouts or picnics or whatever. It was just wonderful. So in addition to remembering all of the things, I remember the places we used to, the day I took Elisheva's group. You remember this? So I started, I know the area very well. I started giving a tour of the place. I was on the microphone in the bus and saying, and this used to be an iron ore mine, and this used to be this, that. And Elisheva's going like,
but yesterday was among the wonderful things. We had lunch in that thunderous Hadar,
yes,
eating iceberg lettuce off the salad bar.
Really, we love it. We miss it, and this is
the last Shabbat. We want more of it.
Last Shabbat for all of our friends, and we know that you are listening to us on the loudspeakers outside the Chadar Ochel and wherever you are. Big shout out to everyone at Ramah. We miss you, we love you, and we wish you a good last Shabbat. This is Shabbat Nachamu, Parasha Vaethanan. I would be remiss if I didn't say it was a beautiful, amazing Parsha. There are so many things in this Parsha, we don't even know where to start. We'll start at the beginning. At the beginning, Moshe is imploring God. He's saying to God, let me in, let me go into the land. And God says, nothing doing. You're not going. And I just want to get your reaction if you were Moses and you got that kind of final, it's a denial of your appeal. It's like Moses is going to the Supreme Court appealing the verdict that he's not allowed to go into land, and it's done. You're not going in. And so give me 2 seconds of catharsis, emotion, not catharsis, but it's just what would be going through his mind, Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanovsky, be Moses for a second in this psychodrama?
You know, I'm hesitating to answer this because I don't know that I can be Moses. I mean, I feel like obviously the character Moshe is disappointed, but the way I read this whole thing, we talked about this some last week. Um, I feel like Moshe, among the reasons that we could talk about, smashing the tablets, we could talk about the episode at the Rock, we could talk about any number of other things that bring an end to Moshe's leadership. But the way I read the whole arc of the story of the Torah is that a new generation has to go into the land with new leadership. Moses he's literally reached the mythic, age of death at 120. Moses has to end the Mosaic leadership, the Dor De'ah, the generation of consciousness of the desert. That's done for. The generation that received revelation, the generation that left Egypt, those things are in the Jewish past, and Moses is in the Jewish past with them. They are our ancestral legacy. I feel like the story makes sense because Moshe ends up on the other side of the Jordan, and that a new phase begins when they enter. So I just my reading of the whole story is that whatever Moshe's personal pain, the logic of the narrative is that Moses has to be on the other
I
side.
agree with you. Look, the story wouldn't work the way it works without this. Barry, you have a
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Jeremy. I don't think that the Torah would have been the Torah had Moses reached the promised land. That, in fact, what made it the book and the book that we still keep coming back to for us week after week now, the last couple of years, but for thousands of years now, is precisely because all Moshe gets is the glimpse of the promised land. That is his essential humanity, because that's what we get in this life. We get a glimpse of the future, and it's only faith that allows us to think that there is something beyond our death.
So let me try something here, okay? Which is that God doesn't reverse the case on appeal, right? The verdict stands. You're not going in. So Moses has a choice. Moses has a choice, which is to wallow in self pity, and and or accept it, or change the page altogether, and change the theme altogether. And I want to present that as a possible interpretation, that from the end of chapter 3 in this, the opening, which is you're not going in, basically the unstated thing is deal with it. And Moses says, gets it. I'm going to have to deal with it. And so the first word in chapter 4 is V'ata Yisrael. You shift. It's like a complete shift in sailing. It's like a come about. He completely goes into another direction. V'ata Yisrael. You feel that the whole theme is shifting. And he says, V'ata Yisrael. Now is Shema elachukim mishpatim asher anochi milamed etchem. And it's not only because milamed is my last name, okay? But this is the shift. The shift is I am now fully embracing my role as your teacher. And I want to talk about this. Now, we touched on it last week. Dvarim is Moshe as teacher, Moshe as rabbi. And now what we're getting here is teaching, on that theme, as with lamed and limadatem, and so many different forms of the word lamed. You could do an exercise in this parsha and kind of list all the different forms where you see teaching. I mean, do you see Moshe as a teacher now? And what's he trying to teach? And what is the content here, basically?
Well,
I think what
yeah,
he's
go ahead.
trying to teach is how Bnei Israel is going to successfully enter the land. So there are a number of references to Baal Peor, the catastrophe that we read about at the end of Parshat Balak and the beginning of Parshat Pinchas, where the children of Israel are seduced by the women of Moab and engage in cultic and orgiastic rituals that, shall we say, are not approved of by the powers that be. And it was the counterpoint to the great sin of the golden calf, which took place in the first year of the wandering. And now in the last year, something similar happens. And Moses, I think one of the keys to the beginning here is that this time God says, don't mention this again, which makes me wonder if before there was an intimation, perhaps on God's part, that Moses might get some release if he would only offer the appropriate argument. But now God has said, we're done here. And Moses realizes that he still has a sacred task. He is the faithful servant of God. And even though he's not going to get into the land, he has to make sure that Bnei Israel gets into the land. And what's going to secure their success is this unwavering belief and testimony of the oneness of God. And everything else becomes subsidiary to that, I think. It's an introduction to what is going to be a very lengthy legal portion of the book of Dvarim, which is going to be the charter for the new state.
Jeremy, Moses now taking on this role, and what the content is, and
So Moshe does a few things, and I think that for the most part, Vaethanan, as Barry said, it's going to be kind of an introduction to the lengthy legal portion. Obviously, the Ten Commandments are themselves legal, and we read Shema Yisrael in specific legal ways, like it has the mitzvah of wearing mezuzah, it has the mitzvah of wearing tefillin, it has the mitzvah of reciting the Shema itself. But really, most of this portion is a kind of a preaching, kind of a sermon, to get people ramped up, to give them a reason why. I think that anybody who wants to persuade people to follow a way of life has to give them a reason why. And so I feel like this is like the preamble before getting into the nitty gritty details. He says repeatedly, I'm gonna teach you chukim and mishpatim, and we have a convention of reading those two words, chok and mishpat, to mean the rules that a chok has no necessarily explicit reason, like don't eat pork. Why? Just don't eat it. And a mishpat is something with a manifestly logical reason. Don't steal, don't kill. You understand? Anybody can understand those things, and the details are not arbitrary. So I think that that repeated thing of I'm going to teach you chukim mishpatim, to me represents the different sorts of guidance that people need. People need a culture, and we have a religious culture, and we do the things that we do, and they connect us, in a way that is beyond mere rationality or mere prudence. And we have mishpatim, which are prudent, which are constitutive of building a good society. Now, there's something that happens in this parasha about that content, which always has kind of rubbed me the wrong way, in which Moshe says, "This is chochmatchem ubinatchem le'enei ha'amim." This is your wisdom in the eyes of the other nations, who will say, "Wow, have you ever seen a nation?" Let me get the exact. Phrasing here. Umi goy gadol asher lo chukim umishpatim tzadikim. Oh, I've never seen the other nations are going to say, I've never seen such righteous, cultural, and prudent, and good social organization. Well, it strikes me as this slightly neurotic Jewish thing of needing validation from the other nations. Who cares what the other nations? What difference does it make if the other nations think that the Torah makes us wise? The Torah should be inherently wise, and the part that doesn't rub me so well is that looking for validation. But the claim that emerges out of that is these are hukim u'mishpatim tzadikim. These are wise, good laws. They're not just. You shouldn't obey them simply because I told you so, but because they in fact do embody the good life. And I totally feel that. We were talking before we started recording about what is trust, and for me, what is trusting in God, or to me, one of the big ways that trust manifests in my life is trusting that the Jewish way of life is edifying, the Jewish way of life is ennobling and gives you virtues. And I have lots of reason to trust that. I certainly have seen it in my own seen it in the world around me, feel it in my own life. But like sometimes when it's hard, to me, what's called for me religiously is to trust that this path is good, is
Well,
wise.
I think you touched on it. I think that Moses's agenda here is to convey to them that sense. Look, they're not going to remember. I mean, I'm thinking about, what if you were in the audience, listening to this speech? Okay, you're not going to remember every single word. You're not going to be able to repeat everything verbatim. Although people had, different kind of memory than we do now. But people are going to experience it in some way. And what is it that he wants to convey to them? He wants to convey to them the sense that this is good, this is right, and there is this thing. I'm not going to get there with you. I'm not. It's the like I want to paraphrase Martin Luther King, right? I've been to the mountaintop. I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you. Okay, he knows he's not going to get there with us. So in the absence of me being there to teach you and to judge you and to be there with you, I'm going to give you this whole suitcase, this whole Samsonite collection of laws that you're going to remember and know. And I'm going to give you the affect, I'm going to give you the relationship. And not only that, I'm going to remind you that you who live 40 years after the revelation at Sinai, you are actually those people. You are, it's this beautiful, genius oratorical move that has Moses identify the people in front of him as if they were in fact the people that were at Sinai, which is, I think, he's trying to do here. He's trying to get them to identify with the people that heard God directly.
And
Barry.
that's
Yeah.
exactly what religion needs to do,
Yeah.
is to help you feel that your personal life has, more than merely metaphorical connection with the great events of the people.
So what's especially rich in what you say, Elliot, is that even then there's this need to take Sinai with us. Right?
Yes.
That's really what we associate with the rabbis, creating opportunities for Sinai moments. But already, as you mentioned, by Moses treating the generation about to enter as if they were at Sinai, it's a way to transport Sinai into the promised land. But from a rhetorical point of view, I think what's interesting is that there's a lot of repetition. Right? Chukim Mishpatim occurs over and over. Baal Peor occurs over and over. The oneness of God. The Shema, I think we could read as kind of a shorthand for the 10 Commandments, which they follow. So that the people who are listening to what is evidently a lengthy address, we don't do it all in one Torah reading, so we know it's pretty long. They will remember those things that are repeated. And they'll come away, I think, this week with this idea that Baal Peor was bad, and we have laws to deal with it. And that's what we need to do.
I want to shift to another theme here, which I think is a really, really important theme in this parsha, and that's encapsulated by the word ahava, which we translate as love. I'm not sure that the word ahava in Hebrew means love that we understand in English. I think there's a layer of loyalty, connection, relationship to this whole thing. The theme is God loves your ancestors. God loves your fathers, really. God loves you. You are to love God. And if you love God, this is what's going to happen. So I'm going to give you the verse. It's the verse is chapter 4, verse 37. It's a great line. "V'tachat ki ahavet avotecha," because he loved your fathers. Because it's like God is saying, I had a relationship with your father. I knew your father. I knew your grandfather. Your grandfather, we were very close. Abraham, I loved him. There was nobody better. Nobody more beloved than Abraham. Avram Ovai, he loved me too. And because of that relationship, you, the descendants, you can be the most awful people. But I'm still gonna have a relationship because of your father, right? Am I reading this too sentimentally, or there's too much sentimentality here with this, or is there something there, right? I love your father.
There's a lot there because the words that follow are by Yivchar B'Zaro Acharav. Because of this love, I took their descendants sight unseen. I
Yeah.
did not even have to wait for them before I chose them as the descendants of the people I love to be my people. And that, in a sense, is a kind of love, right? Where we take what is before us, either literally standing before us or imaginatively in the future, and say, this is ours, this is whom I form an important relationship with.
Does it give us any kind of solace, because we identify ourselves as the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, of course, and in a way, the subtext is, look, we're never going to be like them. I mean, we're certainly never going to, have that relationship. But we're so proud of the fact that our ancestors did have that relationship, and that, I don't know if we have I don't think we have an ambivalent relationship towards them. I think we have an adoring relationship to them. Of course, we adore them as we adore our own ancestors, in the sense that, they're flawed people. There are things that we love and we don't like about them, but they're ours. And in a way, as a descendant here, I'm thinking, gee, isn't that wonderful? God had a relationship with my ancestor, and that alone gives me a kind of credit.
Well, the natural outgrowth of, you guys 40 years later, you weren't the individuals who were at Sinai, but you were at Sinai,
Yeah.
right? And you are not Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but you are Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? And I think that the natural outgrowth of locating our own individual lives in the sweep of the great story is precisely to do that. So God had a relationship with your ancestors. May not be, listen, I don't know you, punk, but but because of our history, it may be like, no, listen, really, the ancient people wouldn't have spoken about DNA, but I see them actually still alive in you. It's Techiyat HaMetim. They're dead people whose genes we carry, and that is in an organic way. This is the resurrection of the dead, and then the dead still live in us. Um, and that, I think, is like a fundamental religious impulse to realize that people who have passed away, both individuals that we know and the mythic ancestors, they're still alive, they're still here. We carry their stories, we carry their, we have a purchase on their past, and we are their future and destiny. By the way, I just want to say one thing about the Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. And one of the piyutim, the keynote in Tisha B'Av, one of the dirges, and then and Azbehaloch Yirmiyahu, he goes and Jeremiah goes to visit all the ancestors' graves to implore them to pray to God to take care of the people, and in this particular, to take care of the punished Israelites. And in this particular kina, God, Abraham says, God, come on, I wonder when 10 tests come through for me. And God said, listen, they really worship a lot of idols, and I really can't overlook that. And then it goes down, and it arrives to Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, Zilpah, and Bilhah. I thought that's so cool. The two concubine mothers of 4 of the tribes. You don't really see them get incorporated into the ancestral lineage that much, but they are the mothers of 4 of the tribes, and so those 2 lower status women are knocked up a notch and invoked along with the more famous ancestors. And I just thought that was kind of awesome.
All right, so let me see if I can compress this. So it's the claim is, because I loved your ancestors, I made a covenant with you. I gave you the 10 commandments, and then the parsha goes on and said, Moses is talking and says, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hear Israel, God is one. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, and you should love God. In other words, I'm reading it in the context of his speech here. Forget the fact that we know this, passage so well. We have the flaw sometimes that the passages of the Torah that we know so well, we recite from memory, we forget the context. And the context is, I loved your ancestors, I gave you the covenant, here you are, here are the 10 commandments, and now I'm asking you in return to love God, and I would say I'm asking for your loyalty. I'm asking for your devotion. I'm asking for, never mind your devotion, I'm asking for all in, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. Vayu Dvarim ha'ele, and I want these things. And I'm going to ask you to comment on this. I want these 10 commandments. Vayu Dvarim. These, the thing that I just did at Sinai, and I repeated for you, I want them to be on your heart. Vishinantam levanecha, and that word only occurs here. Vishinantam, which is like razor chisel in. Vishinantam is to be so sharp. I want them to be incised in you, in your children. I want to engrave. I can't engrave a human being, but like I can engrave stone. But I want, if I could, I want to engrave these words on you. This is what I'm asking from you. I want you. I want your loyalty. I want your connection, right? And so the question is, we say this every day, right? And do we really understand what we're saying here, or what is being asked of us here?
I think this is awesome, and can I just say that that pair of loving is so well instantiated in the liturgy, because the blessing right before Shema in the morning, and in the evening too, but I'll quote the morning one. The blessing right before is Ahava Rabba Ahavtanu.
Love that with the great love.
להודות לשם קודשך ולייחדך באהבה ברוך אתה השם בוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה שמע ישראל ואהבת.
Okay, so translate just for a second.
Okay, I'm sorry for running off so fast. The blessing right before Shema is thanking God for the loving gift of the Torah. It stresses that God gave the Torah because God loves us, and therefore calls upon us to proclaim the oneness of the divine name, be'ahava, with love. And then the first thing we say is, Shema Yisrael, ve'ahavta, and you should love. So the liturgy really expresses that great observation that you just had. I love, therefore you love.
Right, and that there's I'm demanding, or you are demanding. I'm asking. I'm charging you, and I want to. That we have difficulty. Maybe I'm saying it personally, with the sense that a post-Holocaust Jew, a modern Jew, is saying, for us to say love God, we get a little. It's not so simple, right? But if we understand it in terms of, I want the intensity of this relationship, no matter how difficult and painful and how impossible it can be, you live in that relationship. That's what it means to be a Jew. To be a Jew means to be loyal to God with the ultimate, even your life, right? And then it says at the end, okay, so it makes a slight shift. It says, I chose you. You're a holy nation. At the end of chapter 7, lo merubchem, not because you're so numerous. I have cleaved
because
to
you're
you.
the smallest.
You're the smallest. Hama'at mikol amim, ki ma'ahavat me'ahavat Adonai etchem. I love it. I think this is great oratory here. Moses starts out by saying, I loved your father. You love God. And it's because God loves you. It's like, that's the punchline here. It's like, it's your relationship that matters. You're on the line here. It's personal here. This Dvarim is, how does it live in our lives? How I don't know if you have a reaction to.
So you've added a lot of important insights here, Elliot. So draw your attention to the word chashak in the verse right before, Ki me'avat Adonai, from the God's love for us, which intimates a kind of passion that God had for us. So I think that ahav, to love, is used to describe intensity. It's a relationship of intensity. It may not be quite like love the way we see love in modern America or modern North America in the 21st century, but the intensity is an important part. And there are two rivers, as it were, of religious thought and experience that run parallel to each other. One is called yirah, fear, and the other is called ahava, love. And there's a tension between the two. We want to experience God in an awesome way out of yirah, and we also want to experience God in an intimate way out of ahava. And here in our parsha, the emphasis is mostly on the ahava.
Yeah.
That what we're looking for and what God wants from us is not that we stay away, but that we create and forge an intimate bond with Him. And I just wanted to add one last thing, because you asked, do we really understand the Shema? I think that we do, but we might understand it differently every day, because that allows for our own personal and spiritual growth.
I think the whole idea of, the intensity of the relationship. I again, I don't want to, call it out too much, but we kind of have an asterisk on the word ava or love, which is, it's not that. It's not. I don't. I remember I watched an interview of someone in Israel, a very passionate Jew, and he was saying in Hebrew, the way I imagine God, hu melatef oti. He's like stroking me, he's hugging me. I come and I showed it to my class, and I said, sorry, you know, I look, you're entitled, but that's not my experience. I don't have experience, of being embraced. It's just a little more complicated than that, because life is more complicated than that, and the whole matrix of our relationship. But I can get behind loyalty. I can get behind the sense of, I'm connected to you through thick and thin. I'm connected to you if my life depended on it, because my life does depend on it. I'm connected to you, and I will, write it on my flesh. I'll put it on my eyes. I'll put it on my door. I'll incise my heart with. I'll engrave to the extent that I'm able to physically vishinantam, and I will. And it's so important to me. I'm going to teach it. And Jeremy, back to what you were saying. The vishinantam levanecha v'dibarta b'shivtecha b'veitecha. I mean, the rabbis go. Go with that wherever you go. Right? When you are dwelling in your house, when you're walking on the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. So, we have entire tractates on those 5 words.
So, what's striking in the way you're presenting this, Elliot, is that in German, this sounds very much like I and Thou by Martin Buber.
Sure.
That this is a description of an I-thou relationship with God. This is how it happens. You are totally addressing the great one, however, whatever appellation we want to use for God, and you are, if not embraced, you are received by God as well.
I want to push in an opposite direction with you about the lituf, the little caress. I actually feel somewhat closer to that person in the interview, and I just would point out that in two ways: one in a somewhat unsophisticated way, one in a very sophisticated way. Like the Tata in Himmel, God, the Daddy in heaven, Avinu Shebashamayim, the Eibishter. We have a way of talking about God, this very homespun folk, and the simple piety of people who feel that God is the dear Tata in Himmel. I think that that's been a big part of Jewish spirituality. But now the very sophisticated way, and this is true to, I don't know a ton about Islamic mysticism, a little bit more about Christian, but I know a reasonable amount about Jewish mysticism, and the Kabbalistic traditions blend the erotic vocabulary, that loving God is like erotic desire in the human world, because the ecstasy, the joy, the intimacy, the mystical writers tended to find sexual metaphors, because their experience of God was intense, joyful, ecstatic, intimate, and the only human metaphors that really get that done are love metaphors. And I think that our literature is extremely rich in exactly those ways, and it makes its way into the Hadudi, Yedid Nefesh, but certainly the mystical tradition is just suffused with that sense of enormous intimate connection, and I think that's like a great part of our tradition.
It's such a rich. I mean, it's the if not the richest, the most essential theme, right? It's like, what is this all about? What are we doing here? Why are we studying this? It's because everything's at stake. The relationships at stake. Our life depends on this relationship, as difficult, complicated, and as joyful and as as powerful and infinite it can be. It's just this is why we can spend a lot of time on this parsha, and of course on this Shabbat, which is Shabbat Nachamu. We the first Shabbat after Tisha B'av, which is the Shabbat of comfort. And I guess you could say along the theme, Anochi, Nachamu. I am the one who comforts you. God as a comforter.
Dabru al lev
Lev
Yerushalayim.
Yerushalayim.
Speak to the heart. Isaiah says in that passage, speak to the heart of Jerusalem. As we ruminate on how much we love camp, this Shabbos at camp, when the choir sings that Nachamu Nachamu, is just soaring and wonderful, and they always, because of the orthography, there's no yud, there's no second yud in the word Yerushalayim as it's written, but you still pronounce it Yerushalayim. They always say the wrong thing. Dabru alev Yerushalayim. No, it's Yerushalayim. but that it's almost a seduction word. Speak to her heart. It's so rich.
Very powerful. Well, we've spoken from the heart to the heart. We hope. Here we've not even touched the surface of this. Amazing.
We didn't even talk about the Ten Commandments, really.
The Ten Commandments, the Vahavta, and everything. And there's so many quotable quotes from Vaethanan, but this is where we have to leave it, I guess.
But I just say one thing: Ten Commandments, guys, ladies and gentlemen, everyone listening. If you remember one thing out of Judaism, lo tirtzach, don't kill anybody. Okay, okay. Don't kill anybody.
Don't kill anybody. Let's go. We're not going there. Okay. Well, we had a wonderful time talking with everybody today. We hope you enjoyed this. We thank you for spending time with us. And we look forward to you. And the people at camp, we look forward to you back. Have a wonderful, wonderful end of the summer. And we will see you next week on another edition of Parasha Talk. Toda rabah.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.